You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN. Amador County's local commercial television station proudly presents radio talk show host Mark Montgomery and the Mark Montgomery Show, now on TSPN TV and TSPNTV.com. Fighting for small business, the Mark Montgomery Show.
Welcome to the show. I'm Mark Montgomery, and for those of you just tuning in on this particular show, the Mark Montgomery Show, I host a business radio show, Small Biz Talk Radio, on Money 105.5 FM every morning, Monday through Friday from 7 to 9. And then on Saturdays, 1380 KTKZ AM from 8 to 10 every Saturday. So please feel free to tune in, call the show, and if you don't get it on your radio, it is live streamed. And you can go to smallbiztalkradio.com and just click on Listen Live. And of course now it's brought to you on YouTube. So feel free to join the conversation and pass it along, send it along, wherever you feel that what I have to say, others may be interested in listening or maybe even changing their minds, on a few things. Well, interesting news from last Friday coming out. President Obama, our illustrious leader, our dear leader here in, of course, this country. Frankly, I wished he wasn't. I wish that we had any other leader, but Obama, well, maybe he's not quite as bad as, maybe North Korea or, maybe even Russia, anymore. I'm not quite sure where Russia's going, but we're somewhat going in the same direction. And I'm just flabbergasted and blown away with his rhetoric. Now, there's a reason for it. Now, so often I get this comment that, Mark, you're being a little too hard on the president. You need to have more respect for the presidential office. But I brought up an interesting subject this morning on my radio show. And my producer, Lady Di, and I have had this conversation a couple of times, and I am somewhat interested in what your feelings are. Now, of course, you can't call the show, but it'd be interesting if you would discuss it even amongst yourselves. And that is, I made the comment this morning on the radio show that if President Obama came into the radio show, the studio, and someone brought him in and introduced him to me, would I shake his hand? Now, believe it or not, that was a volatile question this morning because it's something that many people, actually in the studio said, Mark, you would have enough respect for the president to shake his hand. This actually came out of a question that I've had in my own mind for actually a number of years. If a person came into your home and literally spread gasoline around your home or your business and threw a match into it and set your home on fire and destroyed your life, would you still like the man? And that's a fundamental question because so many people, and we're going to say somewhere between 70 and 80%, disagree with President Obama's policies. And yet, you have something like a 65 or 70% of the people say, but I like the man. So my question is this: how can you like him when you don't know him? This is much like a movie star or a radio talk show host. For those of you that are listening to this program and seeing me, you can't say whether you like me as a person or not. You don't know me, really. You have the image of what I'm talking about, and maybe you agree with my policies, but maybe I have some kind of personality you wouldn't like at all off the air. You don't know me is the point that I'm trying to make. It's much like watching a movie star in a movie. And so many people say, boy, I really like them. No, what you're saying is you like their acting. You don't know them as a person. So, what I'm saying is, do you know the Obamas? Do you know what goes on in their home? Do you know what goes on behind the scenes? You hear President Obama. Now, he may sound authoritative to you. And you may say, I like that. He sounds like a powerful president, which I disagree with, by the way. But you look at him as an image and say, I like him. How can you do that? You do not know him. So this brings up the question, would you shake his hand? In other words, do you like him from the sense of being a man? And I have to say, and I brought this up this morning, I would not shake his hand. Now, why is that? It's because I don't like the man. I don't like what he stands for. Now, if I were to shake his hand, I would be sending a message. Now, this is just my own personal opinion. I would be sending a message that said, well, doesn't make any difference if he's burning down my business, destroying my family, causing me to go through divorce based on his policies. I'll shake his hand. Now, what kind of signal am I sending? If this was broadcast, I would be sending the signal that, yeah, he's doing some of these things, but you know what? We get along. I'm not really fighting the man. I'm not fighting the policies. How can you separate his policies, his core beliefs, from the man? His fundamental beliefs are that we are all in a commune. We all should have our fair share of everything that is produced. In other words, if my neighbor produces something, I should have my fair share of that in his business. Because, and he's giving reasons after reasons after reasons over a period of time, because my neighbor, or I in my case, didn't create the business. Government created the business. It helped us because it created roads and infrastructure enabling me to create, well, hold on, wait a minute, I didn't even create the business. I couldn't do it myself. This is what Obama has said. Now, many of you have been saying, yeah, but Obama's just kind of in over his head. He doesn't have the experience to really understand what he's talking about when it comes to business. I disagree with you. This isn't about his experience in business. This is all about his fundamentally changing America. This is exactly what he means. He is accomplishing exactly what he set out to do. You're out of work. You're having a tough time getting a job. Your standard of living has dropped. You have less money in the bank, and you are looking to government to bail you out in some way. Whether it be a modification on your loan or, prevent the banks from foreclosing on your home, which was created by government. The housing bubble was created by government. The bubble burst was created by government, their policies. This has set us down in a direction, a path, that has made more people, looking at food stamps and many other programs, more reliant upon government. So when it comes to voting and maybe rolling back these benefits now, helping you survive in life, you're now torn. Gosh, if I vote for this guy, I might lose my food stamps. I might lose this help on getting my loan modification. I will lose, I will lose, I will lose. I better vote for what's, the status quo right now. And what you just voted for, folks, was a far left progressive socialist agenda. Now, this morning on the radio show, and I'm not going to mince words on this, and I get sick and tired of organizations, other talking heads, basically soft-pedaling it, using PC on something that we had better confront. We are at war in this country with two ideologies. One of them being capitalism, which built this country, personal initiative, personal responsibility, opportunity, the equal opportunity country. Not equal share, equal opportunity. We're heading down this other path that says what's yours is mine, and the government will say what's appropriate and divvy it up. All you have to do is to listen to the current President of the United States, and his direction is diametrically opposed to capitalism, and he has said so. He no longer believes, and never has believed, in the capitalist system. It doesn't work, has never worked. Now, whether those words come out of his mouth or his minions, his czars, that fact is there. Now, you may be saying, Mark, you're being too radical. No, I'm not. I'm going to say it exactly with the way it is in words. President Obama said, if you've got a business, you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen. And, of course, who is that someone else? Government. Folks, that is a socialist, Marxist, Leninist, communist rhetoric. Notice that they use the word workers. Now, there's a whole other side to this story also. People say, well, he just doesn't know what he's talking about. Yes, he does. He most absolutely does. He is breaking down the foundation, the pillars of what built this country, and he is doing it rapidly. He has people believing in this rhetoric. He's a good speaker, and he knows exactly what he is doing. And it's high time people understand this isn't a learning process. He understands totally what he is doing. There's no learning process here. This isn't about what's best for our economy. This isn't what is best for you and I. It is what's best for his movement. Because this is a movement towards not European socialism. I think he's looking beyond that. If this man were to get a second term, I hate to think of, for example, the Supreme Court appointments. So we'll be right back. We'll continue this right after the break. I'm Mark Montgomery.
You're watching Amador County's #1 news and sports leader, TSPN.
I'm Mark Montgomery, and of course what we're talking about in this particular, well, the previous segment and this segment is President Obama saying, as I quote, if you've got a business, you didn't build that, Obama said, somebody else made that happen. Amazing, amazing remark. Now, there's a purpose to this, as there is in everything he says. This isn't just by chance he said this and he said it wrong and maybe he got something mixed up. They are emboldened, folks. They understand that a large part, a huge segment of this country now is beholden to the federal government for their welfare. They are on retirement, they are on food stamps, on welfare, on disability, and they really understand that the more money government brings in and can just redistribute, the better off they will ultimately be in living out a so-called comfortable life. I guess no ambition to do anything else than just kind of put in their time and die. We are on a bad path, a horrible path here in this country. And history may actually show that the United States was fundamentally changed. We went a socialist, communist, Marxist direction without a shot being fired. We just literally rolled over and gave up. I don't see that happening because I think Americans will wake up, and hopefully they do this November when they vote. We had better get this country back on track, get back into higher unemployment, higher employment numbers, rebuild, recreate the idea in America that we are a can-do nation. We aren't going to be number 2 and number 3 economically in the world in the future. We are going to continue to be number 1. We haven't even reached our true potential, that we will stand firm for capitalism and our republic. We are in unusual times, and we need to pay attention. We need to talk to our neighbors. We need to be vigilant on what they are teaching in our colleges, our schools, our educational facilities. We need to take hold of our future. And now is the time to be doing that. You know, one of the things that's been very frustrating to me is how business groups and the media has responded to this. And a couple of examples. Now, for those of you that have listened to this program or have listened to my radio show, you know that I'm not real high on many chambers of commerce because they try to walk both sides of that fence because they like to wine and dine, you know, cheese and wine, and, you know, keeping the door open by appeasing those that are literally destroying business here in the state of California and nationally. Well, here's David Chavarin, Chief Operating Officer of Chamber of Commerce, accused Obama of slighting the remarkable achievements of extraordinary individuals. We should applaud the risk takers and the dreamers who are willing to stand out from the crowd, Chavarin said in a Chamber blog. Rather than denigrate what these people have done, we need to encourage more people to be like them. Boy, was that vanilla. You know, when are people going to stand up and stop trying to be PC and being nice? We are not in a nice world today. We are being taken over by a socialist agenda, an actual Marxist agenda, not even socialist. And so many people don't even know it and can't believe it. Matter of fact, this question was asked of me here a few weeks ago. Why, Mark, do you believe that people just don't believe it? It's because they're in disbelief that this could possibly happen in this country. They have been raised with the understanding we have a form of government with checks and balances to make sure that we maintain, through the Supreme Court decisions, et cetera, that we have a republic and a capitalist system here in this country. They're wrong, because it can happen, and it is happening. We have purposely been run into trillions of dollars of debt, so that we now will look to the government to bail us out. And frankly, it's not really about you and I. It's about our kids and our grandkids, because when they get hit with this debt, they are going to continue to look for the government to try and make their lives better. So it's not about today, it's about tomorrow, and that's what we have to start looking at. Another one, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, which I support. I like the NFIB. But let's listen to their comment. The National Federation of Independent Businesses said the President's unfortunate remarks over the weekend show an utter lack of understanding and appreciation for the people who take a huge personal risk and work endless hours to start a business and create jobs. Utter lack of understanding? No. He understands exactly what he is doing, and this is a problem we have with organizations. They constantly give this illusion, this support to the President, that he just doesn't understand. He's an okay, good guy. No, he's not. He is not a good guy. He is changing our lives. He is changing this country for the worse. He has taken us down a Marxist path. How can he be a good guy? And the answer is, I would not and will not shake his hand. Because I totally disagree with him, and frankly, I don't like the man because of what he stands for. Period. It'll be interesting if I'm ever put to that test, by the way. But I would not shake his hand. I would refuse. Says, and goes on, the NFIB. I'm sure every small business owner who took a second mortgage on their home, maxed out their credit cards, or borrowed money from their own retirement savings to start their business disagrees strongly with President Obama's claim. They know that hard work does matter, the group also said. Whoop-de-doo. Why aren't they hitting back hard about his rhetoric? Why he's saying this? Now, why is he saying this, by the way? You know, there's another phase. There's phases to this. And matter of fact, if you go back over some of his previous speeches, you can start mapping this out. This is planned, folks. So what's next? If I were to guess, he's going to be hitting the fact that because we didn't build our own businesses, we're not responsible for building this business. We didn't build it. We had help. It was somebody else. It was government's help. What's the next one? We couldn't have done it without, now get this word in its context, the workers. Now, who are the workers? Well, in this context, they are our slaves that work for our business, and we built our businesses on their backs. This is going to be the next phase. No one's saying this. I'm saying it. This is going to be the next phase as we move in towards the election, to try and make us, which works here in California, by the way, folks. It has worked in California. They have spent decades saying that small business owners, any business owner, is greedy, selfish, uncaring, and they treat their employees like garbage. Well, President Obama is basically saying that we're not responsible for building a business. It's out of our hands. The next phase of this, make no mistake, is going to be, why would you workers continue down this path, slaving to a greedy, self-absorbing small business owner? You know, why would you do that? Now, I have my reasons of why you would do that. First off, is that you're not entrepreneurial, or maybe you're learning a profession that ultimately you will start your own business. Now, that's another story for another time. But he is going to try and convince workers in this country that they have to make a change, that more money should be taken in the form of taxes and many other ways of getting wealth from out of the middle-class entrepreneur into the hands of government, so they can help you as the slaves to small business owners have a better life. It's not up to you. Not up to you workers. You better look to government to make the greedy business owners give more so the government can divvy it up so you can have better lives. Folks, this is all about moving this country into a far-left, socialist, communist, Marxist, Leninist, whatever you want to call it, government. And they're actually doing a pretty good job. So, why aren't organizations standing up firmer than just coming out with PC-sounding rhetoric? Well, again, it gets back to getting along, whining and dining, letting their membership believe that they're really doing powerful things. Well, if they're doing such powerful things, why are we in the situation we're in today? Nationally, debt-wise, militarily, and you name it, we're in trouble on all fronts. We're in trouble right here in California because for decades, they've been going down this path. Now, where has it gotten California? Deeper and deeper into debt. Government workers are guaranteed far more than the private sector workers. And what does that say? Well, this is all about government control, giving to those that work for government and for those people that are willing to accept the government handouts. And pretty soon, you're afraid to vote any other way. Why do unions vote the way they do? Government handouts. So, Romney spokeswoman Andrea Saul told Fox News Monday that the remarks reflect just how unqualified he is to lead us to a real economic recovery. Wow, that's powerful. Talk about, milquetoast. That was real powerful. He's unqualified to lead us to any real economic recovery. I know that, and actually I think anybody in business knows that. How about hitting back and say the guy is a socialist, no different than French President Hollande in France. They call him a socialist there. Obama's run the same campaign, said the same things, but they don't want to call Obama a socialist. Start calling it the way it is. Folks, we're going to continue this conversation when we come back. You're listening to Mark Montgomery.
You're watching Amador County's #1 news and sports leader, TSPN.
Folks, I'm Mark Montgomery, and of course, what we're talking about, the first couple of segments, we're going to talk about a little bit more this segment, and that is what President Obama had said last Friday, and that is if you got a business, you didn't build it. Somebody else did. And of course, he's referring to government. But there's another bigger plan here, and of course we've been talking about that. But an interesting comment that was made by Obama was that the typewriter was first produced, and now we've moved on to the computer. And he says basically in his rhetoric that that wouldn't have been possible without government. And I'm sitting here going, it probably would have been impossible with government. Government did not create the typewriter. Government actually did not create ultimately where the computer is today. Government may have had a hand in it somewhere, having to do with the military, national security, but it was entrepreneurs that took ideas and ran with them, not government. Was it government money that actually was fed into creating the typewriter? I doubt it. Certainly wasn't the computer. Was Steve Jobs or Bill Gates given billions of dollars or millions of dollars to create Apple or Microsoft? No, they weren't. Matter of fact, both of them basically worked out of their garage with the entrepreneurial spirit of understanding and producing a product, which has, of course, brought billions and billions to the economy, not government. So, another one, the Internet. It was said that, well, the Internet wouldn't have been possible. That's not true in itself either. The Internet was originally, and this is my understanding, basically as a military project for communications purposes. Now, the military didn't even come close to taking it to the point it is today. Guess who did? Private entrepreneurship, seeing the possibilities and the ideas of a system like it and expanding and creating. Google was not created by the government. Facebook was not created by the government. Twitter was not created by the government. These are all offshoots of other ideas. And so for a president to sit here and act somewhat, as people might put, naive, unknowing, which of course, like I've said, this isn't about knowing or being naive. This is about agenda, ideology, period. He is an ideologue. He has an agenda. His core belief is everyone should have a fair share in this wonderful big utopian commune. That's the goal. And he said it to Joe the plumber before he was elected president when he was running. And that is, hey, Joe, you're going to have a plumbing company. You're purchasing a plumbing company. Don't you believe that you should be giving to those that are less fortunate than you? And the answer is, and what Joe should have said, no. Whatever I create should be mine. What I'm creating is opportunity for others to have a job or learn what I'm doing and then go buy their own plumbing company. That's what I'm doing. But that's not what Obama wants. He wants that money given to government and redistributed back to the so-called less fortunate. Now, I'll say right now, the less fortunate are always going to be less fortunate because they're always waiting for the next handout, and the government knows that. Now they vote government handout. The end of democracy has always been when people learn that they can vote themselves give-me's. They can vote themselves money, perks from other people's hard work. That's the end of democracy. That would be the end of our republic, by the way. And it's not too far away if we continue down this path. That's why I'm talking as boldly and as tough as I am today, because, frankly, there is a fear that people will not realize this. It's just an amazing time, to me. And I really wish business organizations would stand up, get off the fence, and say it the way it really is. Truly represent business and capitalism in this country instead of appeasing and working with PC and just kind of plodding along without saying what really has to be done. Folks, we are in a war for the very soul of America today. And we need to recognize that. We are in an ideological war today. This goes back to an article I spent some time on, quite a bit of time, months ago. And this was actually from November of last year. U.S. gotten a bit lazy on attracting business. Now, this is part of, have you ever seen the movie Signs? I think it's a great movie. And I think that the fact that it was with Mel Gibson, and it's an alien, movie type of thing, and we're being invaded. And at the end of the movie, you realize that all these signs were here to help him, even his wife's death. All the signs were there. You connect all the dots. And believe it or not, I somewhat believe in that. Signs are there. We need to connect dots over periods of time. This is one article, and I just entitled it Lazy because President Obama says U.S. gotten a bit lazy on attracting businesses. And I know some of you are saying, Mark, what's that have to do with this whole idea that we didn't create our own business? It was government had to do it. It fits perfectly into this agenda. Because if you read this, so many people, the talk show hosts, the talking heads on television, kept asking the question, who's lazy? What is he talking about? What does he mean? If you put this article in the context that he is calling capitalism lazy, our way of governance in this country is lazy because it's just too complicated. And I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but there's a couple of parts I'm going to mention here. One of them is this. He's saying this. This is President Obama. Because of our federalist system. Now, he has actually said in the past, or like I say, people around him have said that capitalism doesn't work, has never worked. We have to look for a new system. What is that system? Socialist, Marxism, Leninist, communism? Now, I know that's, you're going to close your ears off and you're going to say, you shouldn't be saying that. You don't know that, Mark. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. This man is heading us down this path, taking us down this path. Here's what he said. This is back November of last year, because they're getting more and more emboldened as we get closer to the election now, because they believe they have enough people believing in the fair share, the communal aspect, that he can take us to utopia, that they can start saying what they really believe. They are more emboldened than ever. Here's what he said. Because of our federalist system, sometimes a foreign investor comes in and they've got to navigate not only federal rules, but they've got to navigate state and local governments that may have their own set of interests. Here we go, the meat of this. Being able to create, if not a one-stop shop, then at least no more than a couple of stops for people to be able to come into the United States and make investments. That's something we want to encourage, Obama said. Now, what is he saying here? He's saying, heck with those local governments, heck with the states. They should be able to, let's say a business coming out of China, should be able to come to the federal government. The federal government gives them their blessings. Here's where you can locate. You can create jobs. Here's what you can do. Here's what you can manufacture. Done deal. Why? Because it works so effectively in China. Why? Because communists have the say. It's one stop. You don't have local government saying, hey, Apple, you can't come here. No. The communist government says you can locate here, and by the way, you can build that factory as fast as you can get it up. There's no environmental controls. There's no local permits you have to get. We say you can put it up, it's up, and you can finish it, which Apple did in 3 months. A factory arm in 3 months. Take 3 years here. That's what communism can accomplish. And matter of fact, in the beginning of this, in this particular article, well, this was another article that I attached to this, Biden says the great cities are in China, not America. Now, why is that? Again, communists can say, we're going to have a great city sitting right here. We're going to have high-speed rails sitting here. We're going to have desalination plants here. We're going to build a dam here. And frankly, there are environmentalists here from the United States. Get out of our country. That's how they work in China. And what our government, President Obama, is saying, that's what we need here. One-stop shop, the federal government. Now, goes on. Says later at a press conference, Google CEO Steve Schmidt was asked about the remark. Schmidt said, "It is hard to answer without knowing what the standard of laziness is." Kind of like what is, what's approximate, what's fair. He did say that America could be more aggressive. "I think the government and the nation should always be focusing more on the fastest growing parts of the world, so I'm not sure that's a new discovery." He doesn't get it. Here we have a CEO of Google that really doesn't get it. Now, on the other hand, maybe he does get it because when he went to China, China says, guess what? Google, you can come in, but we're going to control what you allow through Google. We will control what you can allow to be searched. And what does he say? Okay, I want into China. Man, President Obama would love to have that kind of power, wouldn't he? Because he's already asked for a switch off on our internet, which luckily he hasn't gotten, maybe, as far as we know. But then he comes back and asks for all of the computer IDs. Everyone, yours, mine, everyone's, so they know who that sent a message, where it comes from. And I'll guarantee you they do have that right now. That's how they can control us. Folks, we're going to come back to this lazy article in just a few moments. Could take another break. I'm Mark Montgomery, and we'll be right back.
The Mark Montgomery Show.
Hi, folks. I'm Mark Montgomery, and we're talking about an article back November of last year on President Obama having giving his, what I call his lazy speech, that America is lazy. And just to put it in a nutshell, what he's saying is if we would just give government the control to say what happens in this country, if business comes into this country, frankly, he's saying in general too, anything that has to do with commerce, in this country, building businesses and creating product, if we just would give the government the absolute control to say, yes, you can do this and you can put it here, we would be a much better nation for it, less lazy. That's being more aggressive. Now, I say the opposite. Being more aggressive would be government getting out of the way so entrepreneurs can be aggressive. The problem that has created his so-called laziness, which, by the way, we are not a lazy nation, not even close to being a lazy nation, we have a tendency to hunker down when we've got bad government. That's what we do. We hold on to our money, we don't hire, we're careful about what we do, we hunker down. And that's exactly what's taken place this year. You're going to continue to see unemployment rise. You're going to see the economy continually slowing down because people are hunkering down. They are afraid to make a move, afraid that this Marxist will be reelected. That's what they're afraid of. And if he is reelected, things are going to get worse. Not better. He went on to say in this article, he says, the way I think about it is this is a great, great country that had gotten a little soft. Now this goes back to a prior speech that he had done talking about we're soft, so we're soft and lazy. And we didn't have that same competitive edge we needed over the last couple of decades. Well, I'm sorry, but you know what? In the 90s, and in the early 2000s here, we've had very dynamic economies. Matter of fact, since the 80s, since Ronald Reagan, we've had pretty dynamic economies. We've had jobs. We've had tremendous growth in this country. Trillions of dollars of wealth built. So to say that we're just no longer have that ability is flat wrong. This is all part of his agenda. And frankly, he knows nothing else. He has been totally educated and basically indoctrinated. His father was a communist. His mother was a dyed-in-the-wool socialist. He has surrounded himself by radicals. And by the way, felons, having felonies. These are people that surround Obama. So it says, and we didn't have that same competitive edge we needed over the last couple of decades. We need to get back on track. What track is he talking about? He doesn't say, does he? He's talking about his track, government tracks. But I still wouldn't trade our position with any country on earth. We still have the best universities and scientists and get this one, best workers in the world. We still have the most dynamic economic system in the world. We need to bring all those things together. Guess what? Of course, under one roof, federal government, under the presidency. It's much like him going against laws now. By waving a wand, he goes, well, we're not going to enforce that law. We're going to do this. We're going to give amnesty. We're going to enforce this and not this. How do you do that as President of the United States and just literally ignore laws? And yet, this man will turn around and say we're a nation of laws. His laws. The ones he deems to be necessary. Do you believe this is dangerous? It most certainly is. And yet, I don't hear a great outcry from our society any longer. I think if this would have happened a decade or two ago, you would have heard an outcry. Not anymore, and that bothers me. And by the way, when Obama gave this speech last Friday about how small business owners didn't build their business. No. They did it. They didn't do it at all. They didn't build their business. What really bothered me out of that whole speech was the applause. The applause throughout his speech, and actually in some cases standing ovation, about what he was talking about, and that is, again, changing our total way of doing business in this country, our way of life, and he is getting applause. Now that is scary. Now, it goes on in this lazy article. It says he also said at a fundraiser in San Francisco, anybody been to Beijing Airport lately? Now, again, this isn't just something in passing. This is all planned, folks. This is, again, a view into the soul of this man, his core beliefs. After this speech and what I'm pointing out here, that he wants control, a centralized, powerful government could get this country back on track, and it could be really aggressive because we could just have a one-stop shop on getting things approved and businesses coming into this country. You and I want to put a business in, one-stop shop. All we got to do is go to the federal government, and they'll give a yay or nay. And, of course, it all depends on how rich you are, how much money you're willing to give the government. That's what it all boils down to. But anyway, like I say, he goes on and says, anybody been to Beijing Airport lately or driven on high-speed rail in Asia or Europe? What's changed? Well, we've lost our ambition. No, I have to say that he has wrung, I should say, ambition out of our economy right now. Like I say, people are hunkered down. He says, we've lost our imagination and our willingness to do things that built the Golden Gate Bridge. Keeping in mind, who built the Golden Gate Bridge? Government program. The Hoover Dam. Who built and what built the Hoover Dam? Government program. These were all work programs out of the Depression. Now, is that what he's trying to do, is to push us on further into depression so that all the jobs, and such as Golden Gates, Hoover Dams, these types of things, that pretty soon we're all employed by government programs? He's proud of those programs? Again, it shows you a little view into this man's soul, who he really is. He goes on, and unleashed, get this, the building of the Golden Gate Bridge and the Hoover Dam unleashed all the potential in this country. Government programs unleashed all the potential in this country. Not the private sector, not private entrepreneurship, not yours and my ability to personally go out and create something. No. It all comes down to the potential is unleashed through government. That's what he's saying, folks. You can't deny it when you really sit down and read what he is saying. Not through the eyes of what you hope he is saying, but what in fact he's really saying based on who he is. There was another article, I want to just briefly touch on this before we run out of time. There's a writer, and he writes for the Washington Post. E.J. Dionne is his name. Now, I refer to him periodically, and of course he's in the Bee almost daily. E.J. Dionne. Now, one of the, frankly, the conservative talk show host on Salem Communications, which owns the stations that I'm on, he was on, I believe it was Michael Medved, and Michael Medved was interviewing this E.J. Dionne, and I tell you, I was driving down the road when I was listening to some of this program, and I about ran off the road because he was saying that E.J. Dionne, he's basically throwing these softball questions at him, and E.J. was coming through as this, gosh, it's just really this moderate, this kind of middle-of-the-road guy. This guy is a flaming progressive liberal. Now, he'll write sometimes like he is a moderate, a John Kennedy-type Democrat. He's not. And this article, and many of them, actually show through that. And this one, for example, he goes on to talk about some other countries. He says, reports from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and others show that social mobility is greater elsewhere. Speaking elsewhere other than the United States, in Denmark, Australia, Norway, Finland, Canada, Sweden, and Germany. Goes on, what do these countries have in common? Now he's trying to say we need to go down this same path. He's hand in hand with President Obama. He says, what do these countries have in common? Not to put too fine a point on it, all have national policies that are, now get this, in right-wing parlance, more socialist, or to be precise, social democratic than ours. They guarantee their citizens health insurance. They have stronger union movements and more generous welfare states. They tend to keep higher education more affordable, more money into education. And in most cases, especially Germany's, they have robust apprenticeship and job training programs. And guess what? To do this, they levy higher taxes. That's what it's all about. If we would only pay more, if we would only do more, we would have this just wonderful utopia that we live within, that everything is just going to be wonderful if we just give government more money. Sounds like Jerry Brown. Right here in the state of California. If we would just give them more money, we would be okay. Why is it that we are hundreds of billions of dollars in debt right here in the state of California? Across the country, we have something like $2.2 trillion in cities' unfunded liabilities and pensions. Unfunded liability, $2.2 trillion. We have over $1 trillion in student loans that are going into default. What is wrong with this picture? It's because progressive policies, progressive liberal policies don't work. They create Californias. They create Stockton, Californias. They create Los Angeles, San Diego's, San Jose's, Mammoth Lakes, Sacramento's. They spend until they can spend no more. They must raise taxes, or they go ahead and declare bankruptcy and just take the hit. Here in California, the Democrats have said since 2000, 2003, if we just keep spending, sooner or later, the public will have to raise taxes. Is that how you want to live? That you are being forced into higher taxes? I don't think so. We need to change direction. How do we do that? This coming November, make it Opposites Day here in California. Vote opposite of what you would normally do, and we can change things. Folks, I'm Mark Montgomery, Small Biz. See you next week.
The Mark Montgomery Show.